All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Generations Legacy Cybertron Universe Metroplex. This is our Titan class for Legacy, or what's probably, I think, going to be the first year of Legacy here. And yeah, no, this is a figure that I've been pretty excited about for a while, just because, like, every other Titan class figure that we've gotten up until this point has been a new iteration of a G1 character. So it's really cool, I think, for them to actually branch out and start doing things from other continuities. And obviously, you know, Legacy's been all about that, so it makes total sense for them to start off here in Legacy doing a non-G1 Titan class figure. And yeah, this is a new version of Cybertron Metroplex. Transformers Cybertron was part of the Unicron trilogy, and part of the whole gimmick of that show was basically, you know, there's a bunch of different kind of like Cybertronian colony planets that had different themes to them. Like there was Velocitron, the racing planet, there was the jungle planet, and we have the giant planet where all of the Transformers there were humongous and also construction workers. And Metroplex was the leader of them and was one of the he wasn't the largest toy in the Cybertron toy line because that toy line also had Primus, but he was up there. He was one of the bigger figures in the Cybertron series itself. And yeah, he's also referred to as Megalo Convoy. That was the Japanese name, which frankly I feel like makes a bit more sense for his character name, just because like he's only really called Metroplex because they wanted to save a trademark and just name the big guy after another famous big guy. But like him being named Metroplex doesn't actually make a ton of sense because like Metroplex is a city, and he doesn't turn into a city. He turns into a construction vehicle. I guess you could say his name is Metroplex because like their whole thing was building, so they built a city, so maybe that's why he's Metroplex. I don't know. Either way, Metroplex, Megalo Convoy, whatever you want to call him, he's a pretty cool figure. Obviously, he's pretty faithful, honestly, to his original alt mode. What was really nice about the Cybertron cartoon is that the CGI models for the show were actually like pretty heavily based on the actual toys themselves. So there really wasn't a whole lot of difference between the show models and the toys. So as a result, if you're updating the character and you're wanting to, you know, keep it very show accurate, it's going to be pretty toy accurate as well. Obviously, you know, it's a Titan class figure and they wanted to add extra bells and whistles and stuff like that. So he's not a one-for-one, just like upscaled model of the original figure. He's definitely got a bit more going on and some different choices being made, but it is definitely capturing the identity of the original figure pretty well, I think. He's got this, obviously, this huge construction vehicle mode. It does have wheels underneath, so it can roll, and it rolls pretty smoothly. Obviously, it's pretty low to the ground, so you can see it's making kind of imprints on my foam core background here, but it works pretty well. He's got the giant claw weapon, which, you know, in this mode is kind of for construction purposes. I love the big wheel back here that it's you know, it's one of those construction vehicles that kind of goes up to the mountain and runs the shovels along it to like break down the mountain and then carry the rocks up and dump them out anywhere. And like scale wise, probably that should be bigger. I don't have a great scale of reference for how those vehicles actually look, but he's also mostly alien anyway. So, but it has a really nice kind of like spin to it, where it is, you know, it is ratcheted. It does have detents, but it's loose enough that like it has a really satisfying click to it when you spin it. Obviously, you know, but it's then tight enough that it's not just like, you know, like flopping around everywhere, although I'm not sure it would anyway, since it is just a wheel, but I think that works pretty well. Obviously, in terms of like articulation in this mode, he's got these little cannons that can fold up and down. I'm not sure if I really like those as cannons in this mode because they're sticking out sideways, which is a little bit strange. If you point them up, they can kind of look like smokestacks, and I think that's not a bad look, but you've got a couple options there. Now, in terms of the actual claw weapon itself here, it has a hinge right here, which is, it looks like it's supposed to be ratcheted, like this one is ratcheted, but it doesn't actually make any sound. That being said, it's also tight enough that it doesn't really cause any problems. So maybe that was supposed to be a ratchet at some point, and then they just decided it was unnecessary. I'm not sure. But yeah, it ratchets at this section as well. And it's got just double, you know, regular hinges for the claw itself here. In terms of rotation, unfortunately, it doesn't have like a huge range. It pretty much just gets a click to either side, which before it starts like running into the shoulder sections here, which is kind of unfortunate just because, like, you know, in terms of this whole claw thing on the actual, you know, vehicle itself, as it is, what purpose does it serve? Because it can't actually like reach down and grab anything. I mean, I guess you could say that like these could scoop up and it could grab some rocks from there, but it can't like rotate to the side enough to put them anywhere else. Whereas on the original figure, this had a bit more range. It couldn't go like a full 360 or anything, but definitely got a bit more than one click to either side. So it kind of makes this whole, you know, mechanism seem a little bit strange, just because like, if it can't actually reach over the front of the vehicle, is it really doing anything? I don't know. There's a couple things that you can do about that. For example, so unlike the original figure, they've kind of split the weapon here into two parts, and then they both, for vehicle mode, attach to this kind of like middle section with the hollow section here. So this is actually attached to the figure itself, which is actually pretty nice because on the original figure, you couldn't pick it up by the weapon because the weapon would just like unpeg from the back. But this one, you can grab it in the middle here, and it has like a nice kind of solid handhold, which is nice. But if you notice here, this section is pretty much perpendicular, and this section is at a bit of an angle, making the wheel angle down a little bit. So if you want to, you could separate these sections. They just attach with a, I don't even know if you can see that, yeah, with a couple clips here. So you could take that off of both sides here and then rotate that around so that the wheel is sticking out pretty much perpendicular to the, or parallel, I guess, rather, to the alt mode, and that this one is angled a little bit. So that makes the arm angled down a little bit, but it gives the wheel a bit more range, so you can get 2 clicks out to the side, and I think that works a lot better. It's still not, you know, as much range as I'd like it to have, because, you know, I'd prefer it to be able to go like at least sort of the full 90 degrees, but that's definitely a lot better. So I think that's probably how I'm going to leave it personally. I mean, truthfully, I'm going to display him in robot mode, but for when I put him in vehicle mode, I think that is the orientation that I prefer, because I don't really need the wheel to be like angled down or anything. I think it looks just fine like this. Another option that you do have is if you're familiar with the original Cybertron Metroplex toy, and I'll bring him out in a sec to kind of show off the differences here. The arms actually bent the other way to sit in the other orientation. I think that they decided to do it like this so that it looked a little bit less like a dude lying on his hands and knees. It still does a little bit, but it looks a little bit less like that than it did for the original toy. So if you want, you can kind of mess around with the joints to get it to sit more like it originally did, for the sake of either, you know, accuracy or a bit more mobility with the crane arm there. So basically, if you want to do that, what you have to do is untab the hand section here and rotate it out like that, and then rotate it in at this joint. And you could do it like that, but the original one was a bit more, you know, compressed in that section here, and then the cannons would actually face forward too. So I don't think that looks bad, but alternatively, you could also, you know, the original one had like a slider. This one has like a big hinge here, so I'll get to the functionality of that for later modes. But if you want to do it for this mode, basically you just have to, you know, swing that around and then rotate that down so it sits like that. I think that makes them a little bit like wheel heavy in the front. So I would personally leave it back, but I think I'm generally going to leave it how it's supposed to be. But if you want it to be a little bit closer to the original toy, you've got those options. I think probably it's better with having it like this. But, you know, to each his own. I think it works either way, and I think that still looks good and does look a little bit more accurate. And then obviously you get a lot more range with the claw arm here because the shoulder piece isn't bumping into it. So, you know, whatever you prefer. But this is how it's supposed to be, and then the hand actually, you know, tabs in when it's like that. Oh, sorry, it should be the other way, right? That's how it should look. Okay, I was thinking that looked a little bit strange than when I tried it out before. It would either be like that, or this hinge is really tight on one side and really weak on the other side. And this is the weak side. or like that. Okay, that's what I meant to show. So that would be the way in which it would be a lot more accurate to the original toy, because he did have the arms down like this. And again, still gives him much more range of movement, though there I'm bumping into the wall. But the other caveat to that is now his head is a lot more visible. And on the original toy, the head was kind of visible, but it was also like up here. So it acted as sort of like a, like I guess a cockpit. I don't know what you'd call it. a bridge section. I don't know. So it makes it look even more a little bit like a guy just on his hands and knees, since you can actually see the head hanging out down here. So I don't know. You've got a few options there, but if you have this hinge out like this, then that still does hide the head a little bit more, but then it kind of brings that arm section further back. So you've got a few options here, which is nice. I don't know if that was really like intended. I think it's supposed to be like this, I think that makes the vehicle mode look the best to have it in this orientation. But the caveat to that is you get a little bit less range with the claw itself. But anyway, that's all neither here nor there. Just a few options. Some other neat stuff that the vehicle mode does. Obviously, it's got these little sections up here, which I guess are supposed to be implied like frames for cables to run along this to have the actual claw be controlled by like ropes, which is, I kind of don't really like when they have stuff like that on Transformers. And then obviously because of how it works, they can't have the actual cables themselves. So it's just like the frames here, which looks a little bit strange, but I don't know. It's cool. It's got pegs on either side. So I guess if you really wanted to, you could like peg in some cables between them and then peg them into there or like here. They wouldn't be able to like retract or anything, but I don't know. There's probably some mod that you could do that would make that actually functional, which would be cool. But as it is, that's kind of how it is. In terms of other features, it's got a little panel in here that you can open up to the side. It's actually got it on both sides of both legs, even though two of them are on the interior here between the two leg sections. But basically there's just a little port there that you can, put a mini-con or something like that, or connect it to the other bases here. It's got the base connection system, which is a little bit odd since he doesn't actually turn into a base. He turns into a moving vehicle, but it's cool that, since they've been doing that with the Titan class figures, that they wanted to give it some sort of interconnectivity to the other ones, and I appreciate that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for vehicle mode. We can show off some comparisons here. First and foremost, for another Titan class comparison, we'll have to push him over here a little bit. Here he is with Siege Omega Supreme in his base mode, yeah, I think they look pretty cool together. Obviously, two different characters from two different continuities, but I think that they fit well together. I really wanted to show him off with Omega Supreme in particular, just to kind of show off the the length of the claw weapon here is pretty much the length of Siege Omega Supreme's rocket, which is pretty cool because like this is a pretty absurdly huge rocket, and this is a pretty absurdly huge claw. So yeah, that's what they look like together. Just for another Titan class comparison, he's definitely bigger than the Arc and is more in line with kind of the other Titan class figures like Omega Supreme and Scorponok, which is nice to have another bigger Titan class figure again. Just for a standard size comparison, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe, just so you can see what he looks like with a average size deluxe car, just completely dwarfing him, obviously. In a similar vein, here he is with, I don't have the Cybertron Optimus Prime or the, Siege Cybertron Optimus Prime, but here he is with Earthrise Prime with his trailer, and I think that looks pretty cool there, just like displaying how massive this vehicle actually is. And then here he is with the Velocitron Speedia 500 Override figure, since they were, two of the other planet leaders in the Cybertron cartoon itself. I think they look pretty cool together. And then last but not least, here he is with the original Cybertron Metroplex here. Mine has definitely had a bit of yellowing going on, but yeah, This really details just how massive this figure was. This, at one point or another, was like the second biggest figure in my collection, like short of Armada Unicron, and now it's just dwarfed by all of these Titan class figures and HasLab Unicron and everything like that. But it's really cool to see the two of them together. Man, I did not realize how bad the yellowing was until I look at them like side by side. But yeah, no, that was I had a fun kind of story with this figure. This was actually the best thrift store find that I've ever found in terms of Transformers. In I want to say it was like a decade ago. I found it at a thrift store for $5, and this was like, you know, a few years after Cybertron had been over, so it was not like, you know, in stores anymore. And I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, I know what that is. And it was just a really exciting find. So that to this day has remained my best sort of Transformers deal. But yeah, you can see what I'm talking about here. How like the claw section on him has this kind of like slightly flimsier connection, so you can you can pick it up by that, but it will probably fall. And it has much more range here in terms of the actual rotation, which I would have preferred something closer to that for this guy, but either way. And then this is what I'm talking about with him, the arms actually went that way, which makes him look slightly more like he's a guy folded up. So I support the decision to have the arms go the other way. I just wish it didn't mess with the articulation of the claw quite as much, but otherwise I think it's a pretty faithful vehicle mode. I just sort of wish that the red stripe here that, you know, is bisected by this hinge, like on him, actually continued, but yeah, you know, that's a nitpick. I liked him having these two little bridge sections, which they've sort of replicated here with these pieces, but, you know, and maybe it would have been cool to have him have the head kind of end up down here like the original, so he's got like that cockpit, but overall, I think it looks pretty good, and it's a pretty faithful, you know, update to this figure, more than like a one-to-one, you know, just new representation of him. It's definitely more of an update, but it does feel pretty authentic to the original figure, in my opinion. But yeah, that's it for comparisons and it for vehicle mode. Basically, from now, we're just going to have to go on to transformation. Now, just like the original Metroplex from the Cybertron toy line, he does have the two different robot modes. He's got this sort of like shorter worker robot mode, and then he's got like the max height, big, huge robot mode. So we're going to go to the worker mode first. It's actually, I should mention this, it's a lot easier to go straight from the alt mode straight to the big robot mode. There's fewer parts that sort of move around. I think like it's close, but there's like a couple hinges that are kind of annoying to mess with that you don't really have to bother with at all if you're just going from this mode to the big mode. So if you don't care about the worker mode, then the transformation is a little bit less like of a workout, I guess, to get just to the big robot mode. But for the sake of the review, I think we should go straight to the worker mode and then to the big one. So first thing you want to do is, whichever way you have the weapon, you do want to take these pieces off and just put them off to the side for now. We'll put them down here. Then you want to take these hinges. So these are the hinges that are kind of annoying to mess with, especially on the other side, that they are in this orientation for vehicle mode and they're in this orientation for the big robot mode. But you want them in the other orientation for the worker mode. So you want to unpeg the arms here and just swing it out to the side, and then move it up like this, and then while you're doing that, swing this in. I usually do it that way just because it's easier to unlock that hinge when you're pulling it up when it's at that angle outward, because otherwise it's just trying to rotate the shoulder. And then you want to rotate it around like that and clip it in place, which is pretty stiff, honestly, but it's gotten a little bit better since I first got him. And then you want to take this piece here that's plugged into the legs here and flip it around, and that will clip into that piece there. Then obviously just do that on the other side, and this is the side that it gives me a lot more trouble. It's not too bad from this orientation, but getting it unlocked from this position is really annoying sometimes, but I'll show that off later. So you want to take that, undo it. This again, when it's like this, it's a lot easier to unlock it, so it's easier now than it would be, you know, going the other way, but you'll see that later. Just take that, rotate this in, flip it around, lock it in place, and then lock this section in place over it, just like that. Then for the legs here, you want to unfold them like this so that you're, got the hips properly oriented here. It's a lot easier to do when you're like holding it in your lap as opposed to like leaning over this table to do it for a camera. So it's going to seem like it's a bit more of a struggle than it actually is. Let me just, there we go. Get that clipped into place. And then you want these sections rotated up. You separate the legs if they haven't already. And you basically want them oriented like that. So it's kind of got this bend there at the knee. And then take the feet themselves, rotate them down on this section so they sit pretty much like that. Which again, if you're familiar with the original Cybertron Metroplex, it's a pretty similar setup to that. The legs more or less were the same. And then on each foot here, which is kind of interesting, I guess they did this so that the wheels weren't touching the ground in the robot modes. But the original Metroplex, like these treads didn't move, and his robot mode had treads on the side. So I don't know, but they have put these on hinges so they can fold in. Cool. Unnecessary, but cool. And then just do that for both legs, and then we can stand him up here, make sure the hips ratchets are oriented correctly. And that's pretty much how you want it so far. Then we're just going to turn him around for now so we can show off what's going to happen with the head here. And bring the section up for now. It's not going to end up like this in this orientation, but you want to take the head and fold this section out. And then we'll bring this back down. And you want to move the arms out of the way just so this has clearance. But basically you want to rotate this to the side just so this piece can rotate ever so slightly more up. So it has the clearance to move around this section here and move to the other side. And then you take the little chest piece here and just fold it down. It doesn't peg in or anything, unfortunately, but it's not too big a deal in this mode. And then for the head in this robot mode, it wants you to orient it like this. So he's got kind of like the, battle mask thing going on, which is the back of his head. You could transform the head like it is for the other mode as well. There's nothing preventing you from doing that because I'm pretty sure that's how it was for the original Cybertron Metroplex, but this is how they want it for this mode. And make sure this is flipped 90 degrees like that. And then for the arms here, I want you to rotate them down so the guns are facing forward. Bring down the forearms here, just like that. And then this section, they just want you to leave on the back of the head there. And then now, what they want you to do, and this is where it differs the most from the original worker mode, is they want you to take the two halves of the weapon and actually attach it to the wrists here, which is, since the original weapon didn't split in half, that's obviously not how it worked on the original toy. I was thinking like, oh, okay, that's a neat new feature, but it's also cool that you can, do it how it used to be and just like flip out his hands and have it be okay. But that actually does not work for this guy because the way that it transforms, the hands would actually be backwards. So you do kind of have to do this for the new worker mode, which is a little bit unfortunate if you wanted it to be more kind of like purely accurate to the original toy and the original cartoon design, because he didn't have these kind of sticking off of his wrists. But that being said, I do kind of like it as in the new orientation. So basically what you want to do is you want to take the claw hand, you can leave this up or rotate it to the underside, which is what I prefer to do. And then you can just plug it into the hand there. Obviously it just uses the same connection and gives him kind of a claw arm. And then same thing here, you can rotate that to the underside and then plug it in like that. So he's got the big kind of wheel for his other arm. And I think that looks pretty cool. Obviously, it's a little bit inaccurate to how the original worker mode was, where he was just holding this the same way that he was in the bigger robot mode, but it sort of makes it honestly feel like there's a bit more of a reason for him to have this separate mode, because there's a bit more difference in the functionality with how he is in his big robot mode. Because like, oh, the big robot mode, he's taller, so he can kind of accommodate holding this full weapon a bit more. And the little robot mode, it's kind of like really front heavy at the feet here to sort of accommodate the extra lean forward. Oh, I forgot to flip in the treads on his other foot there, which like I said, it's not super necessary. You can leave that in again, which would be slightly more accurate to have the treads stay out, but it's part of the transformation. I like this step, so I'm gonna do it. But yeah, no, pretty cool here. Obviously his articulation in this mode is going to be pretty similar to how it is in his big robot mode, obviously differing the most at the legs here. This section, I mean, you can rotate it either way. If you have it like this, it's sitting a little bit closer to the back of his head, so it's just whichever way you prefer. The head can swivel here, and it has this sort of like double hinge section, so you can look up and down a little bit, which is kind of neat. You could, if you want, take these sections in the back here and fold them to the other side to give him his more, you know, like regular robot mode head, and that's pretty cool. He's got an articulated jaw, which is neat, but I think it looks better to have that for the big robot mode, and then use this design for the smaller robot mode. What am I doing wrong here? It can be kind of difficult to navigate moving these past each other. There we go. Okay, and then you just want to plug that back in. It's even harder when you're like standing over it and not able to actually like look at what you're doing. But at the shoulders here, he's got ratchets like this, ratchets out to the side like that, a ratcheted bicep swivel. It's got about 90 degrees of bend at the elbow, also a ratcheted joint swivel right below the elbow. And then, you know, these sections, they can't rotate or anything. They can just, you know, rotate on this joint at the elbow and then do all the stuff that they did before. He's got a waist ratchet. The hips can ratchet forward and back and out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel there. Let's see, how much knee bend? Pretty good knee bend, especially considering how chunky his lower legs are. Although it is kind of hard to keep it from activating some of the other joints. And then he does have an ankle tilt there, and then also a ratcheted rotation at the ankles, which is nice. Oh, gosh. It's a workout holding this guy, and I'm like getting little indents in my fingers just from holding him up like that. But yeah, no, I think the new look looks pretty cool in terms of size comparisons. Just for the standard size comparison, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe and Earthrise Optimus Prime, just so you can see how he stacks up with them. Here he is again with Override from the Velocitron line. Looks pretty cool with her. Here he is again with Omega Supreme, who's probably not gonna totally fit on camera here. So we'll have to raise up here a little bit, just so you can see. Make note of the height difference in this orientation and how that's going to change once we get to the other robot mode, just so you can see the real difference between them there. So obviously a bit shorter than Omega Supreme in this mode. And then here he is again with the original Metroplex in his worker mode, just so you can see some of the differences there. For the most part, I'd say it's still fairly accurate. Obviously, the huge departure is, you know, having these pieces attached to the arms, but I think it's a pretty cool look. Now, obviously, if you want to, you know, you can switch his head around, or you could switch his head around to make him look more like him. Either way, I think that they look pretty cool together, but obviously, it's just like little and big brother there. But yeah, no, it's a pretty cool mode. I think that, you know, I'm not gonna go to this mode most of the time. Like, I generally prefer the full-on robot mode, and like I said, the transformation in between vehicle mode and that mode is a little bit smoother than going from the vehicle to this to the big robot. But, you know, either way, it's great that he still has the worker mode again, and I think that the updates that they made to it does make it feel a little bit more necessary, honestly, than it did originally. But that's all we have for this mode. So yeah, first thing you want to do is obviously just take off these sections for now, and then we'll bring them back on again later. Come on, there we go. Then for the legs here, what you want to do is, this is very similar to the original Metroplex. You just want to unfold this section, unfold this section, and then move the foot down to like that, and get it in that orientation, and then clip it in just like that, and do that on both sides here. So we get his full height here. We got a, well, not quite full height, but let's check the camera here to make sure he's still on frame. Yeah, we'll bring it up a little bit, just to give him some room to breathe here. And then, so you want to take this section and move it back to how it was for the other mode. So you might want to move one of the arms out of the way just so you have the clearance to kind of move this over the shoulder block, just like that. And then we'll just let that flop down for now. You want to take this whole section and rotate it up like that. We're not going to rotate him around the waist. We're just going to turn him around because his legs face the other direction in this mode. Then for the shoulder blocks here, you do want to do that section here where, well, got to move this out of the way. So you can take this black section, fold that back down. So you can take this hinge, this is the side where it's easy to do, and fold it up like that, clip it in place, and then put this back where it was. And we can move his shoulders down so that these end up on the back. And then for the arms here, you want to rotate them around at the bicep. And then the hand is just inside here. You unfold that section and then rotate out the hand. So this is what I'm saying is if it were the other way, then his hand would have been backwards in the other mode. So you can't really have his hands in the worker mode, but that's how it's supposed to sit for this mode. And then for this side, let's see if this is going to give me trouble or not. I want to... There we go. Okay. It's loosened up a little bit. I had a real hard time doing that the first time I did it, but this is that's definitely the easiest time I've had doing it. So hopefully it's you know, just grinded down a little bit of the flash on the plastic there to make this a lot easier. But has been kind of a pain. So flip that up, lock it in place, and then bring this section up and lock that in place. Bring the shoulder back down. I like that it has this section. I'll actually lock that so that when you're rotating the shoulder, it's not trying to like activate that joint again. We'll flip him back around and rotate his arm around. Then unfold this, fold out the hand, and just peg that back into place. Now for the chest piece here, you actually want to bring it up, and it has a separate little panel on the inside that you want to fold out. Bring this down, and in this mode, it actually does peg in, thankfully. It's got these two little, these two tabs right here, which will go into these two slots right here, just like that. And then just press that panel down to kind of meet it there. We still on frame here? Yeah. All right. It's kind of leaning back here a little bit. There we go. Then for the head, just like I showed before, basically you want to take these panels in the back here and kind of rotate them around, and then rotate around the antenna as you do that. And then in the back of the head here, these will basically just peg back together and then sit on the back of his head just like that. So that's how you want the robot mode head. And then last but not least, for this back section here, you don't actually have to do this if you don't want to, but rather than just leaving it on his back here, what you can do is actually take these and fold them out to the side. Is that how you want it, or you want it the other way? You want it the other way. Like that, and then you fold that section down, and you can fold that section up. It kind of sits behind his head, so I usually leave this section down, but you can do either. Yeah, there we have him in his robot mode. Now let's bring back on the weapon here. So you want to take the wheel section and take this section and flip that back around if you didn't have it in that orientation. So you want it so both of these pieces kind of sit under, and then peg it together like that. Mess with the joints here to kind of straighten it out, and there you have his huge weapon mode here. So there's a couple different things you can do with this. If you don't want him holding it, you can store it on the back here. You just have to rotate him around, and you flip this section up so that one of these tabs will go into this slot right here, and the other one will go into that slot. So you can just peg it in like that. It's kind of tricky to do sometimes, just because both of those pieces are also on hinges, and they're pretty tight connections. So you kind of just do them one at a time. And then what's nice is it can kind of rotate out to the side because that whole piece is on that rotation joint there. So you can have it stored on his back like that, and I think that works pretty well. But obviously, if you want him holding it, that is a different task altogether. There we go. Oh, really getting my workout today. So for handles, he's got this handle down here, which is a bit more reminiscent of the handle that the original figure held it at, but he's also got this handle that rotates out down like that, and also has a separate swivel here to make it easier for him to hold it in different positions. And this handle you can plug into to this hand here. It's kind of tricky. Basically, you have to like get it in his hand like this, and then kind of angle it in. I can't really show it on camera, but it's got some tabs that go into his palms here that you have to kind of get in the right orientation, wrap his thumb around it, and then you've got that handle there, which means he can hold it up like that, kind of like a staff, just like the original figure, and I think that looks pretty good. Let me just raise the camera up here a little bit more, just so we can get him in all of his glory, and he's got some room to breathe on frame there. Now, what's nice is because that handle that he's holding on to has a bit of like actual articulation to it, and because it has the secondary handle, one thing that you can do with him that you really couldn't do with the original figure is actually effectively have him dual wield it, like hold it in both hands. So to do that, basically, you can kind of, you can rotate the hand and you can rotate the handle here, and the handle also has that joint. So it really gives a good amount of versatility in terms of being able to grip off his thumb. It can be kind of annoying. Sometimes it's easier to plug it into the other joint first, the other hand first, because this hand, it's not as elegant. There's no tab or anything. You basically just have to like jam his fingers into this section, and he kind of holds onto it relatively well, but it's really this handle that is doing most of the work here. It can be kind of annoying, especially if you don't have it, there we go, locked in properly. Let's just bring this section down and mess with his his huge arm joints, which can be a challenge in its own right, and wrap his fingers around there, and then you can pretty effectively have him hold it with two hands there. Now, it does make him a bit more top heavy, but he does have some joints in his legs to accommodate that, so you pretty much just have to work with the joints here and get him so his feet are a little bit closer to his new center of gravity. And I think that looks really cool. It definitely makes it feel like it's he can actually use the weapon for its intended purpose of like running that into a wall and digging out the rocks or whatever. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good look. Now, in terms of articulation, he's pretty similar to how he was in the other robot mode, obviously. The head can still swivel around, look up and down, and then open up at the jaw there a little bit, which is pretty cool. The shoulders and all the arm, the arms are exactly the same. The only thing new is the hands here. They have, let's see if I can do this without disconnecting that. They've got a swivel here at the wrist itself. The thumb can hinge in and out, and then the fingers are just one big mitt. They can hinge in and out, and obviously get a little bit more range when the thumb is not there. So that's decent articulation. It's nothing crazy, but it works well enough for me. And what I like about it is his hands that look a little bit better than some of the other, like comparing it to the last Titan, I think that his hands look way better than the Ark's hands with the weird sort of like sideways thumb that was kind of always awkwardly stuck in. Other joints that are new to this mode, he's got a bit of a sort of ab crunch here just from transformation. I wish that had a bit more of like a solid locking place, because with the full weight of him, sometimes this can kind of it's not going to buckle under its own weight, but when you're moving them around, sometimes it's easy to accidentally put too much pressure on that and have that fold in. So it's a little bit annoying, but it still works effectively. This isn't articulation, but I don't really understand why he has this. You can actually unlock the cod piece here and rotate it up to kind of change the orientation, which I guess would be cool for like the worker mode, except that ends up on his butt in the worker mode. So like, why change the orientation? And then when you bring it up, it actually runs into the, it doesn't? Oh no, okay, because it doesn't. It looked like it would, but no. So, two different orientation options. It clicks in like that, and it doesn't click in the other orientation, so I usually just leave it like that, but that can come misaligned sometimes. Now, the legs are, mostly the same, but obviously the joints are kind of in different places, so it's going to be kind of annoying to do this with while he's holding that. But his new knee joints are here, which is a little bit high up, but is, pretty accurate to the original toy, honestly. So you can bend about 90 degrees, a little bit more than 90 there at the knee. He's got this joint freed up, which can be really helpful for leaning him forward here, which honestly I wish was a bit stronger, because, let's just take this off now, because that can happen. If you have him leaning too far in one direction, that's the joint that it will buckle at. So if you just like bring him forward a little bit, then he can fall down like that. So I wish that joint was stronger. But if you just pay, he's got huge feet. So if you just pay attention to where the center of balance is, it's pretty easy, I think, to kind of keep that so it's, properly balanced. But just be wary of, how much pressure is being put on those joints in particular. But they are really helpful joints because when you're having him hold the full weapon, basically you want to readjust the center of balance by bringing him forward at the hip and then bring him down at the knee. And that can be helpful for that as well if you want to, get his foot a little bit further forward and not bend the knee as much. You have more of like an arc there. And then that can obviously be used for a forward and backward ankle tilt as well, though it can't really, handle a ton of weight like that. But I mean, he's standing like that, doing that weird dance mode. So it's definitely useful. It's just these joints are slightly weaker than I'd like them to be, but they can still be pretty helpful. So yeah, pretty decent articulation. I will say that, like, compared to a lot of other recent Titan figures, and really like most of the other Titan figures, he does have like a lot more, it seems like, in terms of like moving parts. Like the transformation seems a bit more involved. He doesn't have as many just like huge chunks that don't change shape at all, unless you count, like this. But so I don't know. He seems like he's got a lot of bang for your buck there. You can still activate the little panels where you can put, is it this side or this side? Where are those panels? They're there. Where you can put like mini cons and stuff, and he's got those on both sides of both legs, doesn't he? Yeah, he does. There you go. So you can do that, and it goes through to the other side. For whatever reason, I mean, I don't. You can attach bases there too, I guess, if you want to have this poor dude stuck in one standing place where while he's got static bases attached to his legs. You could do that. You could probably even fold that down and attach them to each other if you really want to, but I'm not going to bother trying to do that because to what end? But yeah, no, I think he looks pretty good. He's got pretty decent articulation. He's very sizable, as we'll get more into in a sec with comparisons. And I love the extra sort of added functionality of being able to hold the staff. I'm just the staff is great. Obviously, I display him holding the staff, but I'm just going to leave it down here for now, just for the ease of getting in his hands and everything and keeping him standing up. But I love that you can actually have him, hold the staff in two hands, and it looks pretty natural. And the other big joint that he really, really needed from the original figure is, one, having more detents in the hips, because the original figure is one of those where it's either like the legs are like that or like that, which I'll show off in a sec. But also, huge is that he has those ankle tilts, which is, nothing crazy for today's standards. But when talking about, the problems with Cybertron Metroplex, the original one, that was one of the big ones, which I'll show off here in a sec. But yeah, let's do some comparisons. Move him off to the side here a little bit. So we can start off with, here he is with Sideswipe and Optimus Prime, just so you can see what they look like together. Here he is with Override for one of the other Cybertron bosses there, which is pretty cool. Here he is again with Omega Supreme, so he's now quite a bit taller than, if you're paying attention in the other mode, he was like pretty much down to here, so he gets quite a lot of height in this mode, which obviously, you're like unfolding his legs, so obviously he would. But yeah, I was not expecting him to be this big in comparison to the other Titan class figures. But it is nice to get back to this, considering the arc was a little bit shorter than ones that we'd seen previously. He's not quite like, here, I'll go get Fort Max if we want to show him off with him too. He's not quite at Fort Max height, which I appreciate, because I would like Fort Max to be the tallest one, but he's definitely a bit bigger than like Scorponok and Omega Supreme. So you can see, he's a little bit shorter than Fort Max, but I think that works out pretty well. Obviously, there's no real reference for how this guy is supposed to scale with all the G1 kind of Titans, so it can really be whatever. Like, he was pretty big compared to Optimus in the show, bigger than the toys were from each other, so I think it works making him a big guy. I probably would have preferred him be maybe for scale a little bit shorter, but either way, it is nice to get another kind of like big, chunky Titan class figure. And then, last but not least, let's move back over here and put back on the original Cybertron Metroplex, just so you can see how they look in this mode together. And yeah, I think that works out pretty well. He's got, slightly better proportions, I think, than the original one, who, like, he's obviously very tall and weirdly lanky, but he wears it a little bit better than this guy did, I think. Obviously, you know, if you're looking for show accuracy, this guy's a little bit closer just because the show model was pretty heavily based on that. But a lot of the details are still there, and I think it's a great update to the figure. Now, the one thing, unfortunately, that he doesn't do that the original figure did, or have any version of, is when you look at the stabs here, the original one had the Cyber Planet Key gimmick, where you would move this section up, kind of locking the wheel in place, and you'd plug in your cyber key there to, I'm just going to force the mechanism, but to open up like that for his big laser. This guy, unfortunately, does not have any version of that. He's got like sculpted detail in here that kind of looks like the place where you'd plug in the key, but it has no movement or anything like that. On the box art, it shows there being like a peg in here, so I think it was probably meant to move at some point during the design, and then they changed it for, you know, cost reasons, I imagine. And you know, I do miss it a little bit, and even the triangle doesn't like rotate, so it's always oriented that way, which is kind of a bummer. But considering all the other things that he does, I think it's okay. You know, this is an update to the figure. He doesn't necessarily do the Cyber Planet Key gimmick, and I'm okay with that. I know a lot of people probably really miss that, but he does so much better, like so many other things so well, that I'm okay with him not having that, but it is something that is worth mentioning. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to this figure. He's a really fun Titan class figure. We can talk a little bit about the price, because they did make a pretty significant markup from our for inflation with our previous Titan class price. It jumped like, I want to say like $30, which is real rough. So this guy, like, original retail is like $199.99, $200 pretty much, at least here in the States. And I don't know that he's worth that. I don't know that Titan class figures in general are worth that markup. I waited and I didn't get him immediately, so I got him on sale at TF Source for like $40 off. So he was a bit closer to the original price of Titan class figures. And like, probably you could wait even longer than that and find him on sale for even less than that. I wanted to jump on that deal because I knew I really wanted the figure, and I would have happily paid the original Titan class fee for him, but I was really not wanting to pay the full $200. So to each his own. I think he's a really good figure. I think he's worth that much at least, if not the $200. But, you know, to each his own. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. I guess the other thing to mention is he's got like weapon ports and even some Minicon ports. If you look at like the top of the claw here, you know, like the actual Minicon pegs. They don't have you can't actually plug Minicons into them because they don't have like the hollow section in the peg, but there's pegs. There's 5mm pegs there. He's got a lot of that all over the figure, which is really nice for plugging on extra weapons and stuff like that to him. But yeah, that's I think everything that I've got to talk about. He's a really cool figure, and I'm happy that I got him, and it's great to see Titan class figures branching out and doing non-G1 stuff. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, usually way less involved reviews than this with the huge setup where I'm breaking a sweat here. Yeah, support the channel, and you know, if you have something you want me to review, leave it in the comments, and if it's something that I have, maybe I'll get to it. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. This is Transformers Generations Legacy Titan Class Cybertron Universe Metroplex.